Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's CC-Webinar.Live keynote and panel discussion session, and thank you for joining. We also would like to thank Amartus for sponsoring today's session. Now, I would like to pass on the microphone to Eric to introduce the keynote speaker and later on to moderate the panel session. For audience, if you have any questions to our keynote speaker or our panelists, please do use the chat box option throughout the session. That's all from my side. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Laura, and hi everybody, and welcome to this perfect storm session. Actually, we're going to discuss the opportunity for inter-provider service disruption. So stay tuned and listen. Enterprises now expect global access to on-demand ICT services. So the combination of a breakthrough technologies in networking, in cloud, and application delivery, combined with the maturing of global standard for provider interoperability and the drive to automate are converging to create actually major disruptions of traditional inter-provider ICT service supply chain. I hope you followed that sentence, but it's all true. I'm very happy to moderate the session for all of you out there with distinguished guests like Daniele Divesh and Gint and Michael, of course, from Martis. So Daniele, can I give you quickly a quick moment to introduce yourself to the audience?
All right, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. My name is Daniele Mancuso. I'm the Chief Product Management in Sparkle. My responsibility is basically to develop all the product portfolio of the company. And I am also a MEF and CBAN board director. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Daniele. And we go to Divesh. Divesh, good morning. How are you?
Hey, am I audible? Just wanted to check if my mute button is on. Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Devesh Gupta. I'm the Vice President of Technology and Sales Operations at PCCW Global. And my primary responsibilities are automation of code-to-cash business processes, also wholesale API development and API standardization strategy for the commercial team within PCCW Global.
Thank you, Divesh. And over to you, Gint.
Hi, I'm Gint Atkinson with SES Networks, and we are a global provider of content connectivity anywhere across the planet. And I head up network strategy and digital architecture, where I'm trying to drive our complete digital transformation and implementation of our full OSS stack and the 3GPP core for satellite and connectivity and content services.
Thank you, Gint, and happy to have you here on board on the panel discussion. And over to you, last but not least, Michael.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Michael Kearns, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Amartus. We're a company who specialize in network and cloud automation. What we do is we work with providers to bring them the best practices, to bring them the standards and the open systems architectures. We have a deep expertise in this area, and in order to turn them into systems that they can that suit their business needs, their particular business needs. My own current area of interest is in inter-provider automation. I'm heavily involved in the standards development work at the MEF. I currently co-chair the LSO committee within the MEF around this area. Nice to meet you, everybody. Thanks to all our distinguished panelists for joining us as well.
Thank you, Michael, and good to have you. Well, we do have, let's say, a nice presentation from you, which you would like to share with us, all of you out there on a beautiful globe. So, if I may invite you to share with you the presentation, and just take it away. Good luck, and happy to listen to what you have to share with us. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks very much. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, just to set some context for this great panel, we titled the panel "The Perfect Storm: The Opportunity for Inter-Provider Service Disruption." I'd like to give some sort of definitions of the background and context for this. So I'd like to start with some definitions on the. Just 1 second. Sorry, I'd like to start with a definition of inter-provider service automation, a description of the problem with the current approaches that exist in the industry, an introduction to the solution, and then talk a little bit more about the perfect storm, why we think it's a perfect storm situation in terms of inter-provider services and inter-provider automation. So first of all, what does inter-provider service automation mean? It's really about automation driven by industry standard APIs that enable providers to seamlessly build or to buy and sell services from each other to fulfill the needs of the enterprise customer. So at the heart of it is the enterprise customer. They need services to connect their global workforce and their global to the global resources they have. And in order to do so, then they need to be able to rely on the providers to be able to cooperate and buy and sell services from each other, so to meet their needs. So that's the definition. If we look at some examples of this, one of the key examples is, say, an international wholesale connectivity provider who needs to negotiate with last mile providers in multiple locations around the globe to provide end-to-end connectivity to enterprise customer sites. A lot of cooperation needs to happen there to make that end-to-end network connectivity actually work. Another one and more recent is, where we have the proliferation of SD-WAN services. You have the introduction of SD-WAN providers who, they're migrating to add the security sort of services as a bundle for the enterprise customer, and they may need to partner with the cloud security provider to offer secure networking between those same sites. So this coordination has to take place between the SD-WAN provider and the cloud security provider. And the last example is a cloud provider who needs to negotiate with edge cloud providers in different locations to allow critical applications to run closer to the enterprise sites. So we all know that like public cloud has been around for a long time, but what we're seeing is the introduction of edge cloud services to reduce the latency for the actual end customer, to give that higher level of experience, to allow those applications to run in the edge. Well, those edge clouds are often hosted by different providers. It's a really big opportunity for traditional network providers to use their points of presence for that. So that's a good example of where you need cooperation between providers, and you need to automate that to provide a seamless experience. So if we look at the current approach that's available today, and it's been around for a long time, many years, there has already been an existing kind of cooperation between providers, mostly around last mile access in the wholesale connectivity market. And the systems that exist today are proprietary, manual, or at best semi-automated, using proprietary APIs and processes. They're also somewhat siloed and fragmented solutions. They were designed specifically to for specific services. As a result, we see that they're complex, costly, and error-prone. They still result in long customer lead times and inconsistent experience for the end customer. And they're not flexible to support current and future services. And most importantly, they can't scale to support the tens or hundreds of partners in a typical provider ecosystem. So we've been trying to solve this problem for the past few years, working within standards bodies such as the MEF and the TM Forum. And the solution that we've come up with is to introduce common industry standard APIs and processes. And the MEF is leading this work with the LSO Sonata standard. What this allows for is automated negotiation for all types of products and services. And it allows for rapid plug and play partner and customer onboarding and interop. And as we go forward through the session, we'll explain why that's really important. But let's look at the next, the reason we're here today and the discussion and the theme of our discussion today. And we'll talk about the perfect storm. And just to give a little bit more background on why we think there's a perfect storm at the moment. if we look at all the technologies areas that are involved in the interprovider providing services to the enterprise customer. For example, if we look at networking, we see a huge amount of change happening in networking with the introduction of SD-WAN and SASE to really replace and augment existing MPLS VPNs. We see the introduction of different new access types, so 5G access and satellite. And then we see a big push for 5G private networks. And then ultimately, we're seeing the first incarnations of network slicing. And we will see more and more of that having to involve multiple providers as we go forward. In cloud, as I mentioned, we have multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and edge cloud, with edge cloud being the newest incarnation of cloud, where you can have a distributed cloud environment and have different parties hosting different aspects of that cloud and having to cooperate between those parties. Having seamless cooperation between those parties is a key thing. We also have the application delivery, which is completely transformed. We have cloud native applications, containerization of applications, and then delivery as software as a service, which means they're hosted in cloud environments. Those applications are. So again, the customer's expectation is that we have increasing customer responsiveness expectation. They expect a cloud-like experience for all of the services that they offer. And this is, we're seeing a lot of work at the MEF and TM Forum and other standards bodies to try to define how to coordinate all of these new technologies, how to deliver that seamless experience for the enterprise customer. And this represents a real opportunity for providers who wish to, new and existing providers who wish to enter the market. So what is that opportunity? The opportunity is really to take those disruptive technologies plus the interprovider automation standards and to be able to differentiate service offerings, increase the customer responsiveness, and create new revenue streams, and to be able to capture market share, because whenever we have a disruption, there's always a possibility to capture market share by introducing a completely differentiated service and new capabilities to your customers. So that's the introduction. I'll pass back to Eric. I hope that gives us some context for our great discussion today.
Thank you very much, Michael. And let's see if some people out there in the chat box are having any questions to, let's say, the perfect storm, which you just shared with us. I don't see any questions coming up, and maybe I can have a question for you, because on the solution you mentioned, an industry standardization and rapid plug and play support. Could you go a little bit more in deep with that? Well, what does it mean, especially for the people who are out there who are not so familiar with the in-depth knowledge that you and Martis have? Okay,
so when we look at the industry standardization, everybody knows that providers can expose APIs, and those APIs can be exposed to their partners, and those partners can use those APIs to drive to negotiate or to operate with the provider. The biggest challenge, though, with just exposing APIs is that those APIs need to be compatible with the systems and APIs of your partners in order to make them, in order to be able to cope with the tens or even hundreds of partners that you may actually want to interoperate with. And this is really what the focus of the MEF is to take what are existing TM Forum APIs and to specialize them in a way that they can support plug and play interoperability. What I mean by plug and play interoperability is that you can achieve that interoperability within a matter of days. It's not something that requires a large project. And those APIs need to be very specialized in a way that enables that. That is what will sort of help you to automate your ecosystem and ultimately create a global federation of providers who can seamlessly interoperate and negotiate services among each other.
Okay, thank you so much for that for that more deep explanation to all of us out here. So if I may ask Danielle, Divesh, and Gint, of course, to join myself and Michael to the discussion, and let me immediately go into, because in the introduction we spoke about the unprecedented changes that are taking place in networking, cloud, and application delivery. So may I ask you, how do you think these changes will impact your business over the coming 2 to 5 years, and in particular your interactions with customers and partners? And if I may, let's say, Divesh, may I come to you first? Can you kick it off?
Sure, sure, Eric. Yeah, I'll kick it off. So thanks for asking that question. It's important for us and the viewers to understand, the context. So I mean, I'm talking about from a standpoint of my company's 2 brands that we operate. One is the PCCW global brand for all our legacy services, connectivity services that we offer internationally, and also the Console Connect brand, which is the fully automated suite of services that we offer. Now, in the context, if you look at that, probably 10, 20 years back, there was no concept of a cloud. Cloud didn't exist, and today we have cloud and applications that are being consumed and delivered on demand. So the customers are actually looking at ICT services that can be actually consumed through a web portal or through an API. And in that context, our CEO, Mark Halfinger, kind of has given us a vision that you take the network and automate as many components of it as possible. And then you meet with these other components. So you meet with cloud operators, you meet with ICT application providers. And in order to be able to fully package and provide a seamless end-to-end experience to the customers, you would need to interoperate with these partners. So in our context, I think there are changes over the next 2 to 3 years that we're seeing would happen both on our supply and on the demand side. So if you look at the supply side, when we are selling to our customers, normally our sales team would be engaging with them on sales orders and whatnot. That is all going to be automated. So surely and surely and probably all of the standard-based connectivity services that we sell are getting automated either through a portal or an API. So what happens with the sales teams? They start developing communities as a result of getting extra time on hand-holding key projects which require much more value-added services. For example, SASE or security on a cloud kind of a thing. So that is on our sell side. On our buy side, where we are engaged with our vendors, typically we would have vendor management teams which would go into the field, and majority of their time is going on day-to-day quotes that we get from maybe an underlying connectivity provider for a last mile, right? Now, with the argument of APIs and automation with these vendors, majority of our connectivity services would get automated in terms of provisioning, delivery. And so what happens is on our supply side also, the engagement with these partners are going to change. Instead of only talking to them on a day-to-day basis on quote and orders, or to their networking teams to interconnect with our network and an NNI. Now we're also talking to their software development teams, where we integrate with them on other fronts to interoperate OSS and BSS processes. So these changes are coming in, as we go ahead and go into a fully automated digital environment.
Okay, thank you, Divesh. Gint, over to you. How do you think that these changes will impact the business from your point of view?
The big objective that we want to be very visible is a seamless experience for the customer. And as Divesh was highlighting, many of these interactions that the customer sees may be amongst the party of vendors that are involved in delivering the service. So it's not just about a customer portal and putting all the heavy lifting behind a customer portal, keeping the customer informed, letting them make modifications, changes, enhancements, and requests, and to see what's going on. But it's also to take the long chain of service providers that are stitched together into a set of virtual network functions and physical network functions and network slices, cloud services, cloud connectivity, transport, and then going all the way out into the access. For SES, we are the access, and instead of the last mile, we tend to be the last few thousand kilometers. So we tend to bring highly mobile customers like aviation or maritime, and both of those platforms are very challenging to install your systems on. To remote enterprises such as mining and energy operations. And what all of these have in common is that installing your equipment, although it may only take, for example, a day to set up a CPE and an antenna, the reality is that they're being mechanically installed on aircrafts, onto ships, and so forth. So there's a lot of logistics you need to make as seamless as possible, automated, smooth, and transparent to the customer. And the key to all of that is inter-provider orchestration and automation.
Okay, thank you. So Daniele, how do you cope with it in the Telecom Italia group?
Well, it's a very good question that requires probably an articulated answer. First of all, here, as Gint was highlighting, we are dealing with the new kind of requirement from customers. That is not simply, hey guys, I want to buy connectivity from you, and connectivity is all the same. But customers today tend to engage us telling, I need to provide this application to my customers, and I need to provide with this level of experience that is basically coming mutatis mutandis from the consumer world. All this is the core essence of the digital transformation of enterprises. So what really you need to provide, and this is what we are working now, is a way for customers to express their requirements through intent, that are intent communicated by real languages rather to SLAs or other technical parameters. And then you need to be able to satisfy those intents. Now, how do you react to a question whereby a customer is asking you, I need to provide an application including this level of experience? You need to be ready basically to speak with a number of partners that you were not used in the past. Content providers, cloud providers. When you interact now with even with network vendors, you don't buy anymore just boxes and install in a data center or in a point of presence. Sometimes you simply activate a license and a piece of software must be instantiated on the spot either in your location or in a customer premise equipment or in the cloud. So the interaction, the level of contracts that you have with these subjects is completely different from the past. To provide automation means to be ready with your system to have APIs, both on the east-west part of your, let's say, business interaction with customers, so on the top level, but also on the north-south, because if you want to provide consistent experience, it's not just to provide feasibility and quote and ordering capabilities, but you want also to go deeper and provide on-the-spot activation for the resources that you have. So you need also to implement the north-south automation. And therefore, you need to stick to those frameworks that are developed by entities like MEF, for example, in order to have guarantees that the partners you are interacting with are consistent with your experience and with the experience that you want to provide to your customers. So in Sparkle now we are fully in this process. We have already activated a good part of north-south automation for specific set of products. And we have implemented also the Sonata APIs that Michael was referring to in advance We are currently in production with big US service provider, interpreting the role of seller. So these guys are buying from us termination of circuits in Italy. But we also developed the buyer model, whereby if there is a complex request that on which Sparkle is a transit provider, we are either able to serve another service provider or an enterprise that is asking us via API to provide a certain connectivity. And if we are not able to provide the end-to-end, we can also ask on the same time to another connectivity provider to provide us, for example, the last mile or an extension to another region.
Okay, thank you, Daniele. Michael, anything to add to the gentleman's comments on the changes which are taking place actually in the networking cloud and application and delivery? I think you have to unmute, Michael. There you go.
Okay, yeah, sorry, apologies about that. Yeah, no, I think it was pretty much covered by the guys, and they give a broad picture of it. I think the most important thing is this sort of seamless experience in the end. That's the number one goal for everybody, is to provide that seamless experience regardless of their role in providing that end-to-end service for the customer, you know.
Okay, thank you. So, gentlemen, while talking about these changes, what changes do you foresee in terms of the type of partners that you will engage with to meet the emerging demands, and what changes do you see in terms of how you engage with those partners? Again, maybe you can kick it off.
Yeah, as I think I may have implied earlier, the number of partners and types of partners is likely expanding. You know, for the whole industry, that trend could reverse, you know, if there are tons of mergers and acquisitions and big telcos. But we see the service industry overall is increasingly disaggregating, and 5G is going to push that. We're going to have, for example, telcos and other providers will focus on being a managed service provider, and they're going to manage the private networks, but they're not going to be the entire service. So there's going to be a lot of specialty players in that service chain, and the legacy telcos are going to come in and do what they do best. The cloud scalers are going to do what they do best, and there's an awful lot of service providers in that chain. I think from SCS's point of view, a really big area for us is to focus on what's happening in the field with our customers and our partners that are out in the field, building out sites. For example, building a high capacity connectivity site is very similar to building a mobile base station or cell site. And there's a lot of construction involved. We have large antennas. If you want to get 2 gig service or 10 gig service, you're not going to have a 1 meter dish. It's going to be an awful lot bigger. So there's an awful lot going on for each customer installation, especially when they want a larger mix of services. Once they get their connectivity, we're also going to be bringing an edge capability, and with that edge, network slicing and every possible type of virtual service on top of it. And of course, if we're the service provider selling a bundle, naturally we don't want to physically deliver all the services ourselves and have all of that infrastructure. We want to get that infrastructure and sell services out of the cloud. So really, there's going to be a tremendous amount of inter-provider interaction and so forth. SD-WAN is a really good example. With satellite, you frequently want to deliver multiple types of connections, geosynchronous versus LEO or MEO, and SD-WAN fits really good to give you link diversity and path diversity, and then it starts rolling on and on. But I don't see ourselves becoming a managed SD-WAN service provider. we need to have a set of partners, not just one, but multiple, that will be able to actually provide the managed SD-WAN service. And with all of these modular services, service providers are going to bundle and they're going to pick and choose which of their best partners is going to deliver the best solution. So I think inter-provider automation and integration is really key to creating more choices.
Okay, Divesh?
Hi there. Hey, Rick. Yeah, so you asked, I think there's an important question of type of partners that we would be engaging and how we engage with these partners.
Exactly.
It's going to change, right? So, I mean, going back to the first point of what type of partners do we engage? So, you know, from the PCCW global standpoint, we'd say it has to be, first of all, win-win. It has to be a win for us and also to our partners, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at that, most of our partners today is traditional connectivity partners selling last mile connectivity to locations where we have, let's say, our POPs around the globe, and then we need access to the enterprise premises, right? That is one. But in addition, then there could be a public cloud provider with whom we have private accesses to offer assured QoS connectivity into the cloud. And then it could be also a SaaS provider, an application provider. So those are different type of providers that we normally would work with. But as I mentioned, that it would also depend upon what can they consume of us. So in our case, we have Console Connect, which is our fully automated fabric, which offers on-demand connectivity to over 300 data centers all across the globe. And that can be activated through a web or a web GUI or a API. And so, you know, if these partners also are able to consume services through us, that is where we're seeing those are the potential partners we are coming in the room and to provide a complete seamless package solution to enterprise customers. How do we integrate with them? How do we, so I mean, you know, in terms of engaging with them, it might change a lot. Currently, most of these used to be a face-to-face interaction or in-region interaction with the partners. Because of the COVID-19, I think there is an increasing trend on moving towards online communication. You know, the web conference we are having here, for instance, is all virtual. So, you know, we're looking at the communities of interaction with the providers, not just with their salespeople, but with their software development and DevOps people. And so just one case in point, on our Console Connect platform, we have a user communities a page where anyone who's onboarded on our platform is able to interact with other like-minded companies, and not just those companies, with the set of people who are engaged in developing and automating networks across various domains, from connectivity to data center to cloud. And they can connect together and collaborate there, look at how they're adopting common standard-based APIs, and then in order to you know, come up and produce a end-to-end seamless solution for the customer. So that's the changes I reckon.
Okay, Daniele, anything to add?
Well, no, essentially Gint and Divesh were summarizing in a good way the type of partners. I would add also some, well, Divesh, of course, was bringing the Console Connect example that is something, you know, typical of PCCW Global. I would add also other actors such as Equinix, for example, Megaport. You know, we are all service providers here are already equipped with a number of NFV-enabled POPs at the edge of our networks. But sometimes there are specific cases on which you need to cover a specific region or a specific country with something installed there, and you might not have a POP that is enabled with the functional virtualization. So you can extend your connectivity, you can extend your infrastructure by using services provided by this kind of actors. For example, you can activate an SD-WAN gateway within Equinix Fabric, or even provide some bare metal infrastructure on the spot to let the customer run some specific application that needs to stay in that specific country. You use API today for all of this, not just to provide the connectivity. And if you think about what Devesh was saying in terms of software application provider. Again, we are all witness of a very sophisticated evolution of enterprise customers' requirements. If you think today that large enterprises are using services such as ServiceNow to have the entire workflow of their activities in a piece of software, and that through ServiceNow they are able to order and implement and instantiate infrastructure on demand. Think about connectivity as an additional component of this workflow. Why don't enable enterprises to use this same workflow management to instantiate connectivity on demand whenever they need and with the infrastructure as code methodology? So those are the new kind of partners that we need to onboard, and we need to use API in order to speak with all of them in a consistent way.
Thank you. Michael, you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, just to pick up on what everybody else is saying there, I think if you look ahead, you know, in 5 years' time, where we would like to be is, you know, a really seamless, you know, environment of federation of providers who work seamlessly to interoperate and to onboard new partners very easily to produce services that even the enterprise customer doesn't know the difference between those services that are just provided by a single provider or by multiple providers. And that would support all kinds of components that would be composed into an end-to-end complex service for the enterprise. And I think with the kind of work and the foundations we're putting in here right now, and the kind of work we're doing at the MEF and Team Forum and other standards bodies is really fundamental to achieving this. You know?
Okay, Michael, thank you. Staying with you, because I heard already a couple of times that the seamless experience and the seamless access, because each and for all the panelists, I mean, each of your companies has different business models, service offering, coverage, etc. So, but yet your customers share a common need. Here we go again, for the seamless access to services. So no matter how many providers are required to deliver them, actually. So, Michael, what challenges do you see in terms of providing that seamless experience for the customers?
Yeah, I think it's
get a bit more in deep, please.
I think following up on my previous sort of answer to the question, I think it's all about kind of creating a global federation where there's a standardized approach for and a standardized automation mechanism where providers can quickly on board with each other, whether they're buyers or sellers or whether they're the one that faces the end customer, and that they can do that in a matter of even minutes ultimately, where they can basically go to each other and say, I have this service to offer, okay, does it match my requirement? And then does that match in turn my enterprise customer requirement? And there's different combinations, and so that they can come together, they can do that in a trusted environment in a fully automated way, and that whole flow in terms of how they negotiate and operate those services actually works seamlessly. I think that's really the fundamental thing that we need to move towards. We're quite a bit away from that right now. There's a lot of sort of, as I mentioned earlier, there's these siloed, sort of fragmented sub ecosystems that exist today for specific types of products, and like last mile connectivity. But if we really think about a system where you can have all types of products and services exchange between providers, and the providers can quickly compose them into end-to-end services for the enterprise, I think that's really where we need to go to, and that's the work we're trying to that's what we're working on in terms of standards at the MEF.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, gentlemen. So we just quickly talked a little bit about the market dynamics, and let's move to the automation side. So maybe and Daniela, how important do you think inter-provider automation is in delivering that seamless experience today and in the future?
Well,
how important is it?
Yeah, I believe it's one of the most critical aspects that are enabling this kind of experience. the current scenario, I would say, is not anymore sustainable and not anymore in line with those requirements that we have spoken earlier. There is also another aspect that we need to take into consideration, that if you consider last year, MEF went public, I think in June, with 8 service providers that were already Sonata ready and in production with other service providers. That number was augmenting in 2021, and it's constantly increasing. It's not just big service providers or tier ones that are implementing the federation scheme that Michael was describing, but also regional and small service providers. So there is the risk that if you don't embrace this wave today, you will be basically cut out from the market, because I expect very soon that many service providers will start to interact just with other service provider in an automated flavor. So who is not embracing that wave of transformation today might be simply find himself in very bad situation. That's my perspective, and that's why we, as Sparkle, we are really fully committed towards implementing the model.
Okay, and at PCCW, Divesh?
Yeah, Rick. So I think Daniel, you just mentioned, regarding the announcement that MEF came up with last year about 8 service providers which had production-ready APIs. I think that is referring to a connectivity, a layer 2 connectivity that we're kind of all engaged in. I think in that context, and also largely in the context of automation, the inter-provider automation is really important, and it goes back to the other question that you had of seamless customer experience. But I'll take an example simply of, let's say, SDI, software-defined interconnects, another brand that we have on the console. Here we have, if you compare with the past, a customer coming to us and ordering a circuit, maybe a connectivity to a cloud, it would require somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks in order to accept the order, provision it, and make sure that all the technical design forms are completed and all that integrity is done. Nowadays, you're able to actually provision that using a web portal, and you can come in and order services which are either cloud to cloud, cloud to network, or network to network. Those are the 3 flavors of services that we are automating, providing to our customers. So it's a seamless experience for the customer, but backend, it is a very laborious, way of interconnecting and trying to integrate different components of networking, data center, cloud. So to make that easier, I think we need to be able to standardize information models and be able to interoperate using common-based APIs, open APIs, such as the MEF or TM forum-based standard APIs. So a lot of work is required, I think, in that direction to make that easy. Another thing I'd like to say is that currently, the onboarding process for adding new partners on your network or your platform is a challenge, because it takes you months to get new partners on board, because most of the implementation information models, they are different. So you'd have to write from scratch, work on what is the interface model, and then work on integrating these APIs. If you have standard-based ones, probably the onboarding process becomes that much more seamless, which is very critical in an inter-provider mix of services, where not all of your services are on your network. There are certain services that are off of other partners' network, and you need to automate that as well in order to provide that internet.
Okay, thank you, Gint. Quickly moving on. I mean, what automation solutions do you have or plan to put in place to enable the inter-provider collaboration, and how do you see it evolving over the coming years?
So the first interface we are using internally for ourselves and with our partners, but we're not going to go for certification yet, is Sonata. And it's turned out to be much more useful than you would expect based on, you know, how the MEF presents it and how people are using it. Once you get down with it, you really find there's an awful lot of utility and a massive amount of use cases for it. So starting to use that Sonata interface was a way for us to say, what does an order look like? What are the service attributes structured like? How do you pass it between different systems, and who understands what? At the same time, we had to implement our own Presto interface. And we're also building our own SATCOM orchestrator. So all the connectivity resources in space and on the ground that are tied to space, all of that needs to be orchestrated. So we are handcrafting, hand building our own orchestrator. Amartys is involved with a lot of that, especially the integration work. And we built a Presto interface there, and it was really important that we were simultaneously working on what does an order look like inside of Sonata for a service, and then what does it look like when it gets down to Presto. And we learned an awful lot from that. There's a lot of things missing. You know, our first service that we wanted to order was SD-WAN. And at the time, the SD-WAN spec wasn't quite ready, still has a long way to go in terms of being part of Sonata, but we worked that out, and then also E-line services. And in our case, we have our entire OSS stack running in the cloud. And we're running inside of Azure, fundamentally Azure for Operators. And Azure for Operators is an ecosystem of OSS vendors that have pre-configured configurations so that you can take down a full OSS stack and get up and running. So when you think about the OSS dominantly running inside of the cloud, this is about 60 to 80% of the inter-provider interactions. As more providers look to the cloud to implement their OSS, you have a complete ecosystem, not just a private OSS stack, but you have a way to interoperate and build an ecosystem that includes an ecosystem of pre-qualified NFVs. So we can go from NFV onboarding to partner onboarding in an extremely rapid, standardized fashion, all built out in one or multiple cloud providers' environments. But the key thing here that Microsoft did is that they created Azure for Operators. We're not going out and buying just resources. We're going out and we're buying complete solutions that are running in the cloud. I think that's where it's going to get really interesting, because then smaller vendors and smaller operators are going to be able to join that ecosystem efficiently. If you have to build your own Presto interfaces, or if you have to convince all of your vendors to implement Presto and Sonata and Interlude, it is going to take a long time.
Nice challenge, right?
Absolutely.
Nice challenge. So, Michael, moving on. What, in your opinion, are the key considerations for providers who wish to implement inter-provider automation?
Okay, so just building on what we've heard from the providers, I think there are three key things, but the overarching message is that we need APIs and we need standardized APIs and processes across the board, all providers to kind of coordinate on standardized APIs and processes. Those processes need to automate the commercial and the technical negotiation at different levels between those providers. So for the commercial side, that will be things like pre-ordering, ordering, and post-ordering activities. And obviously for the technical negotiation, that's to coordinate and make seamless the actual setup of those services and the establishment and maintenance of those services. The second important point is that the APIs and processes must be product agnostic, i.e., it must be possible to trade and negotiate and technically negotiate any kind of product. So whether you're just a seller providing the last mile, or you're a security cloud provider providing a security cloud service, we must be able to support all of these through the common standard. And the last point, and most importantly, is this rapid plug and play interoperability. Because if it takes months and even a year, which we've seen with the current mode for providers to actually interoperate and onboard with each other, that's going to really limit and restrict the number of providers who can actually do this. So having this ability to be able to quickly come together in a matter of ultimately minutes, hours, sort of to be able to choose. And now it doesn't happen like that in reality. But there should be no technical limitation to this. There may be more commercial limitations on who you want to partner with and interoperate with. But from a technical perspective, there should be an ability to be able to go in, share information about each other's offerings, and be able to compose products and start negotiating services based on that. And that's why the standards and the APIs are really important there. So they're the three main points I would highlight.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Daniele, want to bump in here?
Well, I think my colleagues were already describing really everything. The challenge is also to change the mindset that we have within telcos. Sometimes, you need to embrace things that are a little bit out of your borders. And I think that the example that Gint was giving to use Azure for operators is a great example of flexibility and of the right mindset. In the past, telcos were, tending a little bit to be closed environment, to develop everything in-house, but this was requiring, tons of investments and also timetables that are definitely not consistent with those requirements of today. Today, everything needs to be now and on demand. And therefore, the old mindset cannot satisfy this kind of requirements. So open up, embrace new skills and competence, use cloud services whenever it's possible. Don't consider your network as your network, but your network should extend towards your physical boundaries. So that's my message.
Okay, so the challenges are there, but open up. That's actually what you're saying.
Definitely.
Michael, moving on. Question for you. As an automation a solution provider, how is Amartys helping providers to automate so they can be ready and take the advantage of the technologies and technology and services which will change that are taking place, and how to meet the rapid changing customer needs?
Okay, very good. Yeah, so we've been involved with the work and the activity around the interprovider standardization since its inception. And actually, we've learned along the way, more. We came in with a particular view of what was needed. I think to Daniela's point, which you made, which is, it's a learning exercise. There's a lot of education needs to go on with the providers that, they've been doing what they've been doing for many, many decades, actually. And in fact, trying to change something that's been in place for decades is quite difficult. So what we've done recently is we've expanded our offering. So the first thing we've done is we said, look, we are experts in this area. We've built a lot of expertise. First of all, we need to work with providers to support them with that expertise. So looking at the evaluation of their particular scenario and how they can apply things like the LSO Sonata standard and standardize the approach. And that can be both on the business and the technical side. So on the business side, you've got to build a whole business case for why somebody would go down this path, and they've got to understand it and articulate it to the upper management who can actually make the decisions to commit a budget to this. On the technical side, then you've got to work with all the stakeholders within the operator, who often don't work together today. They haven't been forced to work together, and now you've got to bring them together and try to get them in line. Then there's the implementation aspect of that, where you're looking at how do I go about implementing something? As Gint, I think, mentioned earlier, if everybody has to build the systems using the APIs themselves, then we're going to have very slow progress there. So, we need precast solutions for this. We need ways of not, it's like the old story about, sort of when you ask somebody, how does a washing machine work? It really depends on who you ask. If you ask the engineer, they'll tell you there's electricity comes in and spins a motor and all of that. But if you ask an actual person who's responsible for cleaning the house or something like that, they'll say, I turn it on, I pick a program and everything works, and it's a completely different world. I think we need to get to that level where, where it's very simple for people to take the software, implement it inside of their organization and have that up and running. The third thing is, the other aspect is then beyond that is about the onboarding and the interoperability and supporting people there. So we need to really explain that problem. Oftentimes when people come to the table, they're just looking at it saying, I have to implement APIs, but actually that's not the problem. Once you've implemented the APIs, now you've got a bigger problem, which is how do I make it smooth to interoperate and onboard loads of partners, and what kind of systems am I going to use? What tools do I have available to that? So we're supporting them across the life cycle as they chart their way in this journey. Second thing we've done is we've built a precast solution for LSO Sonata, something that they can extend their existing business processes and business systems and processes with to achieve a fast and rapid deployment of LSO Sonata. So they don't have to worry about, how interpreting the standard, dealing with multiple releases and everything. We take care of all of that. And basically they can plug our component in. It's called Embrace, our product. It's aptly titled because it's about embracing partners quickly and making it very, very efficient there. The third part, oh, by the way, with Embrace as well, it's a modular approach that we take. So if a provider is just a seller, then they can actually adopt Embrace for the seller. If a provider is actually a buyer, then they can adopt Embrace for a buyer. So we have both sides. But actually very recently, what we've done as well is we've introduced what we call an end-to-end solution. And this is very interesting because this is very important, I think, for the seamless experience for the customer. What the end-to-end solution allows you to do is it allows an incoming request come in from an actual enterprise customer. It allows it to be decomposed into different requests to different suppliers, but through fully automated to match the supplier requirements. And basically for all the interaction to happen seamlessly between the customer's request and your third-party suppliers. Of course, you will support some of the services on your network itself. But the whole thing is that should happen that can happen in a matter of minutes, that interaction. And it supports the full life cycle from pre-ordering, ordering, and post-ordering activities. The third thing, which I think Devesh introduced a little bit earlier, is for this onboarding and interoperability, what we've been doing is we've introduced a concept of emulators. And the idea of the emulators is, and we're using our Embrace software to do this, the idea of the emulators is to be able to provide a means for operators or providers to actually quickly achieve compliance with the standard. So through these software emulators, they're reference implementations of the buyer and seller solutions, buyer and seller parts of Sonata. And using these emulators, you can quickly test and independently test your solution to ensure that it complies with the standard. And what this does is it allows you to get quickly into the network. The second part is that you can use those same emulators to configure an instance of your particular scenario. Let's say if you're an operator who provides last mile access services, you can configure an emulator as a seller to your specific settings to say, I provide this type of product, and then you can share that with your partners, and your partners can actually test against that. The whole reason we have introduced these emulators is because people are having to currently work from standards. They're having to work from specifications and really figure out all the details themselves. With the emulators, they totally avoid that. they can actually take an emulator. It's pre-configured with their partner's specific configuration, and they can immediately test and get to a level of compliance before they actually do the final interoperability. And this is a really key solution for scaling the number of partners you can deal with in parallel. So currently, with the current approach, what we're seeing is there are restrictions because you have limitations in your test resources, in your QA resources. You can only deal with a small number of partners in parallel. With the introduction of these emulators, you can deal with a large number of partners. And we've worked with AT&T and PCCW Global and through the MEF to actually define that solution. We've done a proof of concept, which we recently completed around that. And actually, we're planning to bring that into a service through MEF because it's so important to the adoption and expansion of the standard within and to creation of that federation within the community.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Well, gentlemen, looking at the time, I think we have to wrap up a little bit. So by doing that, again, maybe you can briefly in closing, what advice would you give to providers who are starting their journey to introduce inter-provider automation?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is really getting into adopting the standards. In the case of connectivity, it's not only TMF. TMF essentially will give you APIs without a service payload or without a resource payload. All of that comes from the MEF. So if you want plug and play, they have APIs with attributes and payloads there. That's where MEF LSO comes in and completes the picture. And we need to drive the software and solution vendors to support this. And then I would say there's an ecosystem structure that's way more efficient, where many more of these applications could be running in some type of a cloud marketplace environment, so that there is no plug and play. You just start by playing. You don't have to plug it together. It's already done for you. So we need to put pressure on the whole ecosystem to get it structured, get into LSO, get into TMF, and then drive the entire ecosystem to build the best integrated solution that's up and running.
Okay, thank you. Divesh?
Yeah, in closing, I think two points I'd like to touch upon. One for operators out there who are just starting their journey, right? I think they need to have a common language to have these two teams of people working within the organization. One is the networking folks who are kind of doing IP engineering or deploying networks all across the world, and the second is the software development team, which is actually really writing code on top to automate the services or their OSS and BSS processes. So it is very important to have these teams work together. At PCCW Global, we adopted the SAFe Scaled Agile framework as that common language, where these two teams, the cross-section of people work within close-knit agile release trains and offer that value to the company, where you're kind of doing an automated service using, incidentally, maybe a MEF or a LSO API. So that's the first thing, the common language. The second one is, like Kent and Daniel and Michael have been saying, adopt a standard. I think that's going to be the way to go going forward. If you have proprietary API, it's not going to help. We actually contributed, we worked with the Martis on that POC, where we set up LSO Sonata APIs and set up a test bed, if you will. And that was actually maybe a good way to start for people who were actually just starting to adopt Sonata standard. To take a look at that, there is a Git repository available from MEF, which is, it provides the SDKs for the APIs, but then you have a testbed platform now, which would be available to members for further test and development. So those two things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Divesh. Daniele?
Yeah, I will be fast. So my first message is hurry up. Second one is don't try to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations that are built for this purpose. Turn to MEF, you will have a lot of support for, from education up to implementation, and with the test bed that Divesh was mentioning before. Also, don't think that you need to destroy your existing CRM, OSS, and BSS stat. If you need support, turn to companies like Amartus. They will build a step-by-step program to onboard you as smooth as possible. Again, there is no need to destroy whatever you have at home, but you can simply gracefully integrate. But hurry up, because the time is now, the perfect storm is now, and the whole industry needs to move consistently.
Thank you. Michael, some famous last words for this.
Thanks very much,
for
Eric.
this session.
I think and thanks very much everybody for those words. I think the main thing that I see is this getting over this hump of people thinking that they can achieve inter-provider automation by just exposing APIs. Those APIs need to be a specific type of API. They need to be standardized, APIs first, which is a given. But they also need to be APIs that are designed in such a way that they support that rapid plug and play interoperability. I know I've used that term many times, but we're never going to build a federation unless you do that. But I think people get a little blindsided when they're starting out in the process and say, I have APIs, that should be enough. And everybody will adapt to my APIs. And even if they're standardized under the wrong APIs, you're in trouble, because now you're going to have long, lengthy conversations and projects with people to try to actually interoperate with them. And that's not going to open up your offering to the market or to your customers, really. So I think pay much more attention to what you're choosing, because when you get to the real problem is how you do this plug and play and how you scale to support those tens or hundreds of partner providers seamlessly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And with those words, ladies and gentlemen out there, I would like to thank Amartus for sponsoring this session. Michael, it, as always, has been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for sharing your interesting, disruptive, perfect storm presentation. Thank you very much. I think a lot of people, and especially for providers, you opened their eyes, and as Daniela said, we need to move. And so, Michael, and from Amartus, thank you very much. I would like to thank as well Daniela from Sparkle, Gin from SCS. Thank you so much, and of course Divesh from PCCW. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we didn't see any questions. On the other hand, it is meant that the gentlemen, the distinguished panelists, they were so clear to all of you. If you want to reach out to them, please do. From my side is now ciao for now. I thank you so much, and see you soon. And over to you to the studio back in Berlin, Laura.
Thank you, Eric. Dear all, we are at the end of this webinar session, and I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Michael, for his interesting presentation, panelists for sharing the knowledge, and our audience for joining and listening. This panel will be soon available to watch on CC Media portal, and we are looking forward to welcoming you in our both physical and virtual event this year. For more information, please visit our events portal. If you're interested in supporting and sponsoring one of our future branded webinars, contact CC team. For fresh content on all updates, follow us on our 4 social media channels, and also subscribe to our Telegram news channel if you want to receive exclusive invitations to our webinar sessions. That's it for today, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.